Okay. So you can just see me, hopefully. Right, sorry guys about that. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining me for tonight's webinar on food and mood. The more I'm learning about the gut-brain axis, just the more fascinated I get. It really does blow my mind, and I'm hoping today that you will enjoy this presentation from just a curiosity point of the view in the least. This is for you if you suffer with low mood, anxiety, overwhelm, IBS, bloating, get mood changes, if you find you're tired a lot or get energy crashes, or if you're going through hormonal shifts, or just feeling a bit overwhelmed and stuck. So you are in the right place if any of that resonates with you. And tonight is really about the connection between food and mood. But it's also going to help you connect the dots to why you might be feeling that way and why it's happening. And I think a lot of the time when I work with my clients is helping them understand why they're getting that feeling or why they're getting that symptom just takes a lot of the pain away and confusion, and it's quite reassuring when you can help someone understand those root causes and connect the dots. So hopefully we're going to be able to have a bit of an exploration around what's causing those symptoms and how you can actually influence your mood to be brighter, hopefully, through food. So you can expect to feel at the end of this session, hopefully validated, better informed, better educated, hopeful and supported, and take some actionable tips away with you. This isn't a medical diagnosis. This isn't supposed to diagnose or treat. This presentation is really to help give you some guide and some idea about what's possible and what you can do, and like I said, help you understand why you might be feeling that way. So a little bit about me. I know lots of you have heard me speak before or know me or worked with me, but I'm a nutritional therapist. The therapy bit of what I do is looking at all of the factors that influence your mood or your health. So I don't just talk about diet and nutrition. I talk about, how are you sleeping? How are your stress levels? Or what's your environment like? How are you eating? Are you sat at a table? So the therapy bit really sort of starts to look much more about lifestyle and behavior. I'm waiting to be a nanny, and when I say I'm waiting to be a nanny, if I get a phone call and the video screen goes black and I've gone, it's because I'm waiting for my daughter to have a baby and she's overdue, so I'm literally looking at my phone all the time. But I have been in practice 10 years, and I really do believe that if you don't know where to start with your health, always begin in the gut, and the rest seems to fall into place. It's the best place to start. If you're confused or you've tried lots of things, you're exhausted, let's just take a gentle look, sensible approach with food and your gut. But I often see that collection of symptoms come together is fatigue, the gut issues, sleep, stress, and low mood. I see that all the time. It's a very strong relation between those symptoms, and we can influence it through improving our gut health through food. So let's move on. So the gut-brain axis, I don't know if you've heard of that term, but I think it's bandied around a lot and people don't really understand it. And to be honest, I didn't either until I did a very, very deep dive into it. But this really is about the communication, the two-way communication between your brain, which is your central nervous system, and your gut, which is your enteric nervous system. Now, there are billions and billions of neurons in the gut and in the brain, but they're connected via the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve itself has more neurons in it than the spinal column. So you can see how sensitive this highway is and how many messages are going both directions from the gut to the brain and the brain down into the gut. So we're going to explore that, but we're going to look at the three main communication routes. So we're going to look at the hormonal route, the neural route and the immune system. And largely the immune system is influenced by the gut microbiome. So we do touch on the gut microbiome as well. Now, the vagus nerve is the 10th nerve going from the brain, and it's the only one that goes all the way down through those organs and goes through the gut. And so it doesn't just influence gut, but today and tonight's webinar is really focused on looking at the innervation from that vagus nerve through the gut. But it does affect your kidneys, your liver, it affects your digestive processes, your gut motility, your speech, your behavior. So there's lots and lots of factors to it. Everyone will have a slightly different experience of their gut-brain axis and that connection through the vagus nerve. But there's a lot of power to be explored there. If you're not sure what's going on, or you feel that sort of gut feeling anxiety or fluttery nerves, there are so many tips I could give you to help calm the vagus nerve. But tonight, for the for the reasons of time, I can't explore all of that with you. But I'm going to do my best to take you through food and mood and that connection. But I wanted to talk to you about the vagus nerve because I want you to have hope and some reasons and some idea that there are further steps you can take to help you calm the vagus nerve if it feels a little bit out of control, and it will feel like it can just feel like difficulty swallowing, difficulty digesting, but it can also feel like anxiety driven from the gut. So there's lots of ways we can get that to sort of calm down and go into a rest and digest state. So that's what we need that nerve to go into to help you digest your food. So a lot of people say to me, just going back to that picture quickly, because I specialise in gut health and I help people with IBS or acid reflux, I help them really work through that north to south digestion and really help them to calm the vagus nerve so that the body can go into that rest and digest state. And that is one of the most important steps that I could give you as a takeaway from this webinar if you are that person that feels that you don't digest your food very well. And I'm just going to leave you with this sort of idea of what most people say to me in my clinical practice when I'm working with them is they say, food just feels like it's not digesting and it feels like it's sitting there like a stone. Now, if that resonates with you, then we need to do some vagal tone work and work on your digestion. But food really can help us to feel better. But really where that all starts is at a little blob inside the brain called the locus coeruleus, and it releases adrenaline in response to food. And it's your approach to food, your anticipation, when you start to think about maybe being excited or hungry when you're looking at food. And interestingly, that feedback loop also then suppresses your appetite when there's a certain amount of food detected in the gut by the vagus nerve. So you can see how important this connection, this nerve is, because it really does feed back to the brain and say, I think I've had enough food now, or I don't feel right, I don't want to eat. So it can lower your appetite, but it can also drive that sort of overeating behavior as well, and not switch off the appetite control. So there's lots of factors going on between the gut and the brain, and it's understanding that there are reasons why you are maybe driven to overeat or snack on sugary foods, or you've got a real penchant for crisps and you can't leave them alone. There is something going on there. It's not just you're being greedy or you've got no control. It's not just in your head. There is actually a driver, a mechanism in there at play that can drive that sort of behavior, but equally it can just switch your appetite off. And so quite often when we feel anxious or so a good example is if you've got a big presentation the next day, you've got like an interview, or you've got something really exciting happening, it might be something really good, something really positive, it can make you feel like you can't eat, and that's that connection. But your gut really is important in exploring and feeding back to your brain what's going on in the gut. So it's starting to interpret what you're eating and what you need more of and what you need less of. It's in the dark, isn't it? Your gut's completely in the dark, but these neurons are sending the messages back to the brain, and telling the brain what food you've eaten. It's detecting, have you eaten enough protein? Have you eaten enough sugar and fats? So all of these things are below our conscious detection, but your gut is doing that work for you. So firstly, let's look at hormone communication, because although that picture probably looks quite complicated, and it is complicated, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of hormones being released inside the gut, and these gut hormones, they affect your appetite, your reward centers, your motivation, your satiety, so how full you feel once you've eaten, because those hormones go from the gut directly back to the brain, to the hypothalamus, and then they switch off the hunger or appetite hormones, or they switch them on, or they leave them on. So this is really important to remember, that the hormonal communication is your direct link back to the brain that will drive behaviors. It will also affect your mood, because it's going to help you release neurotransmitters in response to what's going on in the gut. And then the next way we can communicate between the gut and the brain is through immune cells. And this is the fascinating bit from my point of view, the most fascinating bit, because it's all about the gut microbes and what happens at that gut barrier. So when I talk about gut barrier, if you think about your gut, and interestingly, a lot of people think the gut is just down here, but it starts here. So it's from your mouth and the tube that goes all the way through your gut and out the other end. So all of that is your gut, and all of it is lined with this mucosal lining. But down inside the small intestine and the large intestine, there is this gut barrier, and it's the mucus lining inside your gut where the immune cells lie. And they are literally reaching out with fingers into the gut lumen. That's the space, the whole, if you think of it as a hose pipe, it's the space inside your gut. And they're actually reaching out and sampling the food that you've just eaten. So there are literally images, you can go and Google this, it's incredible. They actually reach through and they can kind of sample and taste, oh, that's a lot, she's eating protein, or he's eating protein, or that's sugary, or that's fats, and they can feed back to the brain what you've actually eaten. Similarly, in an inflamed gut, it might start to respond in a negative way and fire up the immune cells that aren't happy. If the gut mucosal lining is broken or inflamed or disturbed, these inflammatory signals then get messaging back to the brain, and they send you a message saying, I'm not happy down here in the gut. And so there's a strong link between not feeling right in the gut and your mood. An inflamed gut will always result in an unhappy state of mind, or anxiety or stress feelings, because it's not happy, and it's an intelligent system, and it's trying to tell you there's something not right going on there. So it will switch off your energy, it will switch off your mood, it will make you feel withdrawn, tired, exhausted, because it will want to shut down those external sensory inputs. It's trying to get less inputs back down there so that it can heal. But sometimes when we don't know what's aggravating the gut, and we keep eating the foods that are triggering that inflammation, that inflammatory response continues. And then in time, with that broken barrier, it can lead to more systemic inflammation. So all of a sudden, the inflammation that was in the gut now leads to things like brain fog, or aching muscles or bones, joints feeling sore, arthritis, other inflammatory conditions, autoimmune conditions. So you can see how important the immune system is inside the gut. And I know you would have heard this before, but about 70% of our immune system inside that gut lining. And that is true. It's such a powerful immune response in there. because it's going to respond to what's inside the gut and what's going on in there. And we need to protect that gut barrier. So the first thing I would do if someone came to me with an inflammatory condition is work through the gut to heal the gut lining, make that really strong and resilient. Because I can tell you from the many stool test results I've seen, the more inflammation and more dysbiosis there is in there, which means an imbalance in gut bacteria, not an unfriendly bacteria or bad bacteria, but just an imbalance can cause that inflammatory response. And the more inflamed or the more imbalanced the gut bacteria, the worse the mood or depression or anxiety is. And then the third way I wanted to explain to you about how the gut brain communicate to each other is through the neural communication. Now, this is the fast communication. This is like a phone line. This is like you picking up the phone and immediately you've got an answer at the other end. So this is the quickest route. And this can then lead back to the brain and say, right, we're in an inflamed state in the gut, we're not happy. And these specialized cells in there called the endocrine cells, they are responsible for producing serotonin. And they produce serotonin in response to the gut bacteria producing metabolites. And so this whole connection between bacteria that aren't even human, they're not even us, and how they communicate with our immune cells and our neural cells inside the gut is just so fascinating. And so hopefully this is starting to show you how complex our gut and our brain is and how they communicate and the many different routes that we can get it right, but we can sometimes get it wrong depending on that inflamed state or diet or stress, medication, fasting. Lots of people think fasting is the panacea for longevity, and I can tell you that lots of people I see who are fasting don't feel great, but they just keep battling on. And I'm like, I don't think fasting's working for you. But this neurocommunication will start to create behaviors in the gut. So it will speed up motility. All of a sudden, you might feel fluttering down there and you might have some urgency, or quite the other way. You might get that shutdown feeling where actually everything's just gone quiet down there and nothing's moving. So there's lots of things going on with the neurons, with motility, the stretch, the microbes producing these short chain fatty acids, and all of that starts to influence back up into the brain, and that affects our stress, our anxiety, appetite, motivation, lack of motivation, so introvert behavior. Oh, I love this picture because it's so simplified, but it shows you what I was trying to explain earlier about this inflamed gut. And these cells, this is our mucosal barrier. And when this is inflamed, it gets a bit pulled apart, and proteins and bacteria can slip through. And when they slip through, they can then raise an immune response, and you get inflammation, you get inflammatory cytokines and other white blood cells coming to their defense to try and fix the problem, but it all gets ramped up out of control. And this was largely what was seen in COVID. Inside the gut, the strong link between COVID reactions. So if you remember back, you might have known people who got affected, not just in the lungs and respiratory, but the COVID infection really affected their gut. And that was what was going on because it was just mass inflammation. So we're looking for this nice tight junction, so the gut cells all butted up together like that with no gaps and a much happier mucosal border. And you can see the mucus is much thicker on the healthy gut side. And it's this degraded mucus on the inflamed gut. So the bacteria are now actually sitting on the gut cells. The cells don't like that because they're supposed to be this lovely juicy mucus layer protecting you between the bacteria and all the food proteins that you're eating and the gut cells. So an inflammatory gut quite often is linked to low mood and that anxiety sort of picture. Nice simple picture showing you this two-way communication. This is always going on all the time without your conscious detection. It's amazing what our gut can tell our brain and what our brain can tell our gut. And quite often when I'm working with my IBS clients, I will say to them, can you think about what triggers first? When you get anxiety, do you feel it in the gut first or do you feel it up here? And quite often it's like split seconds apart. And they can't tell whether the stress actually, like you wake up in the morning, you think, oh, I've got this to do, that to do, and then the feeling goes to the gut, or whether you wake up and you think my gut doesn't feel right, then the anxiety starts. So have a think about that, about where it starts for you. Where does that mood, behavior, anxiety start? Does it start in the gut or does it start in the brain? So I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about short chain fatty acids because I do run lots and lots of digestive stool analysis. And every time I look at these reports, the first thing I go and look at is the short chain fatty acids. I just find it so interesting because of the link between the short chain fatty acids and mood. So I've been studying this for 10 years now, and actually I fell into the whole gut health arena right back in the beginning because I got 3 clients who came to me with diverticulitis. And the more I sort of researched and dug into that, the more I was seeing a connection between stress and gut problems. And one of the things that was coming out in the report all the time were very, very low short chain fatty acids. And then we look at the diet and see how we can influence the production of more short chain fatty acids. The more you've got in the gut, the better the gut is. And remember that picture of the gut mucus lining and the border and the healthy gut, not the inflamed gut. The more short chain fatty acids you've got, the healthier that gut barrier function is. And so we're going to look at how can you make more short chain fatty acids, because if we can simply influence the gut bacteria to produce more of these short chain fatty acids, your gut's happier, and generally the feedback will be to your brain that your gut's happier and your mood will be happier. So more short chain fatty acids, more serotonin. Now you would have heard lots and lots of people saying, 80% of your serotonin is made in the gut. Well, that's true, but that serotonin stays in the gut. It's really important for the behavioural and the motility and secretions inside the gut. Serotonin is how that all happens. So you might make lots of serotonin in the gut, but just to remember that that doesn't travel up across the blood-brain barrier. It's not like that. It just stays in the gut and it keeps your gut happier, your gut cells happier, and affects the motility and secretions. So if you feel like you've got a very acidy gut, this would be a really interesting area for you to explore. So let's look at the food and lifestyle levers. So things that we can really do. So things that you can take away today and start implementing and see if you can improve your mood. Now, that is not going to be surprising to you, is it, that they're mood draining foods? I mean, there's no colour in it. We know they're not good foods. Yes, every now and then it might be a party or something and you succumb to a burger or something like that. And this isn't any judgment, or there's no, I'm not the food police. But think about the colour and think about the nutrients and think about what it's not giving you. It's certainly not going to help you make short chain fatty acids. So they're the mood draining foods. No surprises there. But the important thing to think about when it comes to your mood is how stable your blood sugar levels are. Because quite often, the dip in energy or mood, it can be directly linked to what you ate when you ate earlier. And so have a think about what your timings were. When did you last eat? How far apart are your meals? And are you skipping meals? Are you practicing fasting? Do you feel good on a fasted stomach? Some people feel great on it. Are you having coffee? Because quite often a lot of the fasting sort of rules will say you can have a black coffee, but that's coffee on an empty stomach. And some people with sensitive guts or an inflamed gut, that would be like putting petrol on a fire. So it's not great for everyone. So you've got to take this as it's not a one size fits all, but have a think about your blood sugar stability. Are you having balanced meals so they're getting you from breakfast to lunch and lunch to dinner without needing to drive your day with coffee, snacks, sugars? Have a think about that. So balance is key. So like I said there, meal timings and consistency. So the gut bacteria that live in your bowels, they are in the dark, and they really love to have predictable cues. They like to know when the food's coming because their behavior is in response to the food that you're going to feed them. So your meal timings actually can be really important way to influence how your gut feels. If you can be consistent and predictable with your timings, the gut bacteria sometimes respond in a really clever way that gives you a much calmer feeling. Some people love the fasting and they feel great on it. Other people say it just doesn't suit them, and you just know because you'll feel a bit jangly, or you'll feel exhausted, or you'll have brain fog. So think about meal timings and maybe try and plan out to be a bit more consistent with the timings of the meals and the balance in those meals. And then think about, is there a part of the day in particular where your energy and your mood takes a real nosedive? That's usually a really big clue. So have a think about that. Maybe plan it out on a diary for a few days and see if you can spot a pattern. There usually is one. And I will help you spot the pattern if you can't spot it. But a really nice thing to do is to actually just think about nutrition and balance in colour. And so go for lots of lovely plant-based foods and bring in the colour, make it really pleasing to the eye. The more colours you can get on your plate, the better, because your gut microbiome really responds to that diversity. Also, it gives you loads of flavour, so it makes it tasty. But it would be amiss for me to not talk about omega-3 fatty acids. Now, it's really hard for us to get enough omega-3 fats in our diet naturally. If you have already got an inflammatory condition, let's say arthritis, or you've got an autoimmune condition, or eczema, something like that, you're going to need more omega-3 fats than the next person. But even then, it would be difficult to get it through your diet. And so some people just do need that as a supplement, especially if you're not a fan of oily fish, because that really is our best source of omega-3 fats. And we know that the dietary intake of omega-3 fats, because they can cross the blood-brain barrier and they have a direct influence in the brain on how you're going to be able to make your happy hormones and your neurotransmitters, because the omega-3 fats really are the backbone of making those neurotransmitters. Your brain cells need those omega-3 fats in high amounts. So it's really important that you look at your omega-3 intake. If you're a bit suspicious that you don't have enough because you're not really a fan of oily fish, or you don't have nuts and seeds for whatever reason, then it might be worth considering a supplement. But there are so many out there. I would just drop me an email and say, I just would like some advice on omega-3s, because it's a minefield out there. You'll get a label on there that says like high strength omega-3, and then if I look at the back of it, the label, I can see that it's not got the most important bit, which are the EPA and DHA. So that's what you really want in the high amounts in your omega-3 supplement. Now, this is going to be a really big area of research. I think 2026 is not going to be about protein supplements anymore, or protein shakes. I think it's going to start to be about polyphenols, because the more we are understanding about the power of the polyphenols and the effects they have on your microbes in your gut, the more we're going to be able to chase a better mood and chase away depression and anxiety. So the polyphenols are these really powerful, colourful compounds that are in food, plant-based foods, that help support a healthy gut-brain axis, because they directly feed the gut bacteria. And the gut bacteria, when they're fed these polyphenols, guess what they make? The short chain fatty acids. So it's going to be about polyphenols. And the easiest way to make sure you're getting a good range of polyphenols is to eat a rainbow, eat for loads of different colours. And I'm going to list out, here you go, here's some lists of some really powerful polyphenols. So dark chocolate, you'll be pleased to know, is one of them. Any of those deeply coloured vegetables like beetroots, carrots, tomatoes, green tea is really good. Herbs and spices, curcumin or turmeric, cinnamon, thyme, oregano, parsley, mint, coriander, all of those herbs and spices are really powerful ways to get flavour in your food, but to give your every meal a little boost of polyphenols. So have a go at adding in a little bit more colour, go for the deeply coloured things, and add some more herbs and spices. And there at the bottom, there's a red wine and tea and coffee. Really powerful source of polyphenols. This is a lovely study. I wanted to share with you the power of polyphenols. So this shows you the effects of dark chocolate, and this was looking at mood in healthy adults, because they were linking up the changes in mood directly to gut microbe behavior and the species that were enjoying the dark chocolate. And so they showed that the gut microbial diversity was much higher in the people having the dark chocolate in their diet. And they were testing two types, so the 85% and the 70% cocoa content. And there you go at the bottom. Dark chocolate exerts prebiotic effects, prebiotic meaning it feeds the gut bacteria, and it can restructure the diversity and abundancy of the bacteria and improve negative emotional states via the gut-brain axis because it supports production of short-chain fatty acids. So everyone's going to get off here and go and eat dark chocolate, aren't they? Okay, now I think it's important for us to keep a little bit of sensible guidance here as well with missing nutrients. So if anyone came to me with low mood and they said, I really need help with my mood, I've got anxiety, depression, and I can't seem to, I have a healthy diet, I would be straight away looking at their omega-3s, their folate, magnesium, fibre, their polyphenols, protein content, so the balance of the meal, and also water. I mean, it sounds so ridiculous, but we all know we don't drink enough water a lot of the time when we're busy. And one of the most important things about water is it hydrates the cells. So as it plumps up the cells, and think about your brain being 70% made of water, with those plumped up cells, toxic waste can get out and the nutrients can get in. If you imagine, we've all got one, I've definitely got one, a plant on the windowsill that needs a bit of TLC, basically needs watering. When they go floppy and dehydrated, they look really sad and limp. And that's kind of what happens to our brain cells. And all our cells need water. So don't forget water, really important to make sure you're hydrating properly, because I quite often see fatigue and low mood go together, and that can be linked to dehydration. So it's a quick win, it's easy. Just have a go over the next few days, pushing your water content up and see how it makes you feel. If you try all of those steps, so you look at your balance of your diet and you look at the protein, have you got enough protein in your diet? Have you got enough colour? Are you eating enough plant-based foods and diversity? And drinking enough water? And you think you're sleeping okay and stress levels aren't too bad, and you still feel something's missing, you're not feeling quite right. I just wanted to tell you there are some deficiencies there are really easily missed, and it doesn't always look like, crawling along the floor. It looks like you're just getting on with your day, but you're firing about 30–40%. If that sounds like you, I would then suggest that we talk about testing. There are some amazing tests out there, and I can get some really simple finger prick tests, kits that go to your home and you just prick your finger, or you can go for a blood draw for a wider raft of tests, and we can just find out, stop the guessing and just find out, are you deficient or is there an imbalance somewhere that's been missed? Because quite often there's something quite simple, and when you correct it, you feel so much better. And so if you feel like you do everything right and you just want to have some answers, then consider the testing. So here's my 5 gentle shifts that will support your mood. So I want you to really go away and think about this. Are you having enough protein at breakfast? Because we start our day off obviously fasted after an overnight fast. And our brain really likes to detect protein in the gut through that vagus nerve. So when you put enough protein in, the message that goes back is literally like a sigh of relief to your brain, because it says, "Oh, there's enough protein. I can now make hormones, I can make energy, I can make neurotransmitters, I can repair cells that need fixing, I can restore energy and balance. I can do all of these things." Your brain and your gut and your body cannot do it if there's not enough protein. So if you're waking up fasted and then thinking, "I haven't got time," or "I'm just going to skip it, I'm going to fast, I'm going to have a black coffee, or I'm just going to run out the door with half a banana," is it enough protein? Probably not. Have a think about it and try a week of having protein at breakfast, whether that's an omelette, scrambled eggs on toast, whether it's a really nice granola with some Greek yogurt. Just try and think about your protein content. If you want some protein ideas, I have loads. And if you go on my website, if you go to the recipe page, you can actually type in breakfast ideas and some lovely ideas and recipes will come up. So go and have a look. Think about the protein content of your breakfast. And then think about your plate. Is it balanced? Are you getting enough healthy fats, protein, colour, fibre? Are you getting enough balance in there? Is there enough to really keep your energy levels going? And then think about the colour. Feed your gut bacteria so they can make those delicious short chain fatty acids, because the short chain fatty acids don't just make serotonin and happy neurons, neurotransmitters inside the gut. They actually feed your gut cells so your gut barrier can be healthy and strong. So make sure you're feeding your gut bacteria, and that might be with some nice fermented foods like kefir or Greek yogurt, like I said, but eat the rainbow as well, get all those colours in. Obviously, ditch all the carbohydrates, added sugars, fizzy drinks. We're not going to go on about that. And if you feel like your digestion is stuck and it's not working for you, you get acid reflux or something is feeling heavy in the stomach, like it's just sitting there too long, always support digestion before going on a restrictive diet. So if you think, "Oh, something's not agreed with me, I'm going to cut gluten out, I'm going to cut dairy out, oh, it must be, the onions, the garlic, it must be a low FODMAP." Before you do all of that, think about supporting digestion. And if you want my help with that, I'm happy to give you some tips. So have a think about that. Here's what not to do. Elimination diets without guidance, without a doubt, is the worst thing I'm seeing in clinic is people are on restricted diets. They make themselves worse and worse and worse. And then all of a sudden they're in a whole world of trouble. Don't choose supplements over food. So if you think you're popping loads of supplements because you think you need a bit of choline, or you heard someone say you need CoQ10 or you need magnesium, do you? Have you got it in your diet? Supplements are there to supplement a diet. They're not there to fill the gaps. You can't supplement your way out of a poor diet or a missing nutrient deficiency. You can't do that. Stop blaming yourself. You haven't got it right. You just might have missed something, and that's what you get guidance for. Stop trying to guess it alone. It's really difficult to navigate all of the confusion out there on Dr. Google. There's so many messages out there, but I would just get one-to-one advice. Don't keep guessing. And if you are really stuck and you just don't know, we can do tests and let's find out. Oops, sorry. So some people don't improve going alone because they don't address their root causes. If you've got IBS, it's never just one thing. Stress, hormones, infections, medication, they all influence how your gut feel and how they behave. Have you missed some deficiencies? Are you sleeping? Is there inflammation? And then some people just feel really so knocked down with fatigue and the mood that you've just lacked motivation and inspiration. You don't know where to start and you're overwhelmed. And that's all completely understandable, but there are solutions and there are answers, and we just have to start somewhere. If you feel like you'd like to work with me, I'm the right person for you. If you've tried doing all the right things and it's not working, or you feel like you're not quite on top of your game, if you've got gut symptoms and mood symptoms, if you want simple clarity, not another diet, if you want a really nice clear roadmap with some simple steps to get started, and if you want to feel empowered and you're ready to get going, then I'm the right person for you. And we can just start with a friendly chat. So I always offer a discovery call. It's free. I love what I do, and I would be really happy to speak to you and try and give you some tips and advice. And if you felt that I was the right person, I'd love to work with you one-to-one. So I will help you connect the dots. I always share the science, so you're not ever confused. Most people leave the consultation saying, I'm actually excited to go shopping. And if I can get anyone excited about shopping, I feel like I've done a job well done. So thank you so much for being here with me this evening. I'm going to go to Q&A. And if you're not following me on social, give me a follow, because it's a great way for me to keep connected with you. Every day I post on there, so that would be lovely. So find me on Facebook and things. So I'm going to stop share, and then we do Q&A for anyone who wants to hang around. Stop recording.